Hi, I'm Seamless, and today it's time for part 2 of the making of Virtual Riot's We're Alone, my remix of it. Yesterday, we did the first part, which was about all identifying what all the individual bits were in the arrangement and how that worked and why and all that kind of stuff. Today is sound design, where I'm going to talk about how I made all the sounds in here that I made and that kind of thing. And then the next part, the third part, is going to be about mixing and mastering, which will be about how I put it all together, as well as how the drums came to be. Since that's a big part of how mixing works. For me, anyway. So, let's begin. In the beginning, mostly what's happening is this stem that's getting gross beaten, and it's some EQ and whatever. There's not a lot going on in that. I actually showed most of it last time. This one was a little interesting. This guy is that one of the other stems, only it's I don't have my keyboard enabled, do I? Here you go. It's one of the original stems slowed down, and I put a volume on volumation just so that there's a consistent beat on each quarter note. That's really all that's going on here. There's some unison, and this is a mid-side business, but it's not super complicated or amazing. Nothing really sound designing at this point. And then we have this is the liquid part. And we can discuss sort of what's creating these sounds. So I think this top guy is the main bass. Let's have a look. We got an EQ and a filter. The filter is used later to do that. So the majority of what's actually being this sound is being done inside the hardware, which is what's making the sound. So in here, we've got some unison with the harmonic unison pitch windows as eliciting change. The harmonic unison pitch window is where you're able to change how deep the unison detune is. That is the pitch difference between however many voices you're using per harmonic. And as you see, the difference is it's a little bit. It's not a huge difference because usually 50% flat is the level for complete regularity. But any amount of difference is going to create some weirdness against the sound, especially when you distort it, which I have, as well as a little bit of prism change, which also kind of the prism's job is to move the harmonics around a little bit. And if the harmonics get a little bit out of their original pitches, it's going to cause phase cancellation, which causes interesting sort of spectral characteristics. As well as this chorus here, which is before the distortion in the effects order, which you can see here. And then a filter, which is not keyboard tracking. All of that, plus a little bit of mixing into the saw, or the square side from the saw, is into the distortion that I've got going on here with the filter is also pretty low. And that popping keeps happening too. And all of that is contributing to create the sound. The EQ afterwards is just, tonal characteristic changes, that kind of thing. This big old dip here is pretty characteristic of regular drum and bass sound design. Like putting a notch up in there is pretty common when it comes to drum and bass basses. It's just become sort of how the style sounds. That's that guy. And there's this guy. And this guy's interesting because what he is really he's just a saw wave and a sine wave, but they're racing together. Which you can hear very slightly happening. I made the saw wave or the sine wave a bit different pitch. They're both going out. They're both going into a phaser. Now the phaser is what's causing the bite in this sound. What I'm automating is the filter here. You might not hear any bass. That's because there really isn't any. There's some going on here, but as you see in the post EQ, the very last thing here, I'm just turning off the bass because I'm layering it with the other guy. And the chorus is just there to add some little bit of depth, but as you see, the wet dry mix is pretty low. The EQ is mostly still just tonal tonal characteristical changes, and so is this guy, which is a little irresponsible of me to have them two doing this where I could just have one doing it. But I don't know, it worked out to be the way it is. In the phaser itself, I have no sweep frequency, so it's not moving around. It's wherever I put it and it stays there. Now, what's interesting about the sound is actually someone in one of the videos where I showed this said that they were annoyed by the really obvious Vocodex processing. And I don't know if I have Vocodex on anything in this track, but it's funny that this sound probably triggered that response, because that's kind of how Vocodex sounds when you have a very thin bandwidth in the individual bands. And that's kind of what the phaser is creating, is very thin bands. It's like a whole lot of really thin like band passes almost, and it causes a similar result. So that's where that sound comes from. Together they become I just noticed that this pattern and this pattern don't match. And that's because this guy is probably something I altered in the later half. Fortunately, though, since it doesn't share a fundamental tone because the other one's high passed, it didn't cause so much distraction that I would have noticed in the first place. Honestly, all that I wanted out of that secondary bass was the sharpness of that the phaser created. I didn't distort it after that, did I? No, just went into that. Neat stuff. This continues to be all that until we come to here. Now, let's see. The primary sound design bits that I have done here, still continuation of the basses and stuff like that. I used one of the Leviathan packs risers plus my own FM riser, which is this guy. See, this guy, this guy, and this guy. That's that sound. So let's see what's going on in there. This is a citrus. I have a triangle wave, and I have this weird looking triangle wave with some interesting alterations to it. Now, how did I do that? Because this guy. Oh, I see. I matched up the phases until that happened. Even though I didn't need to do that to create this shape, I could have just used one of these modifiers to do something similar. But I guess that's what I decided to do. And this is modulating this dude, but as you see here, I have this PE knob turned all the way up. What that does is it changes how big the difference is in the pitch windows. And what I mean by that is in this, I have the pitch tab here and have mod X, and the mod X control is controlling pitch position throughout the entirety of its playthrough. Now, what the PE knob does is that by default, this position here, it's set to 1200 cents, which means 12 semitones, which means 1 octave. That means that from the center position to the top is 1 octave, and from center position down to the bottom is also 1 octave. If I send it all the way up, it gets turned up to 4800 cents, which is 4 octaves. So that means that now it's 4 octaves up and 4 octaves down. It means that this pitch variation now has an incredibly much larger impact on what the sound sounds like. So it means that it's 4 octaves below this 0.2 setting. Now, because this is a ratio, what that means is that 4 octaves means that 1 octave down would be 0.1, another octave down would be 0.5, another octave down would be 0.25, and one more would be 1.25. And what that means is that this particular oscillator is FMing this oscillator unbelievably slow, except for when we increase the speed. And that, along with the pitch increasing, because remember, this is a pitch ratio, which means that as the pitch increases, everything increases around with it, including the relative pitches of everything else, of either oscillator. And so that means that the whole thing is increasing in speed that way, but then it's also increasing in speed in terms of the modulation speed, which is what this main mod X here controls. And then this is just the volume of the channel it's in, which has some EQing going on and some chorusing to make it sound bigger. And that's how I created that riser. So now we've got actual stuff going on here. Okay, so for the first hit, we have two serums. Yeah, so this serum, I think it's this one. Yeah, it's this one in this automation clip. I am organized. All right, so I don't know if either of these oscillators actually made it into the final release of Serum. This looks like one of mine. I forget which one it is. And this is actually, I think this is Monster 4 squareized. That's what that is, squareized. They both have bend plus and bend minus is on this guy, and then bend plus and minus is on this dude. And the macro is the primary automation source. I don't know how well you can see it, but the little green dots show up. Yeah, there you go. And these are both going into the filter, which has the reverb mode engaged. Do I have any effects in here? I have a phaser on doing that. And then I've also got EQ, and then an extra wave shaper to give it some bite. Yes. If you have no idea what I meant when I said that this was Monster 4 squareized, there's a video on my channel called Squarifying a Table and in Serum, and that's what that was about. And I'm pretty sure this is one of the tables that didn't end up in the final release. One of the Reese mess tables. Fun stuff. The other Serum. Actually, I need this one. This guy. Yeah. Now this is Monster 4 or 1. It's one of the monsters in the list, in the spectral list. It's either Monster 1 or Monster 4. It's one of those. And I just hit the save button. I don't want to do that. This one's actually a lot more straightforward than the other guy. It's got a macro going on here and asymmetry, which is a type of bend. What are you doing? It thinks it's doing something. Oh, but only because okay. Weird. Whatever. Anyway, asymmetry is a different kind of bend mode. Bend mode bends, in and out. Asymmetry bends out and like just to the side. That's what asymmetry does. So a combination of that plus the actual wavetable motion creates much more interesting, sort of morphing stuff. I also have all passes on, which is kind of like the reverb business, but I have the macro on the mix. So that means that as it approaches one particular side of the table morphing, it creates more of that kind of spacey sounding filter business. And then this is also distorted to add bite a little bit, and then some EQ to kind of bring it in. I also brought down the bass on this guy because it was designed to layer with the other dude. Indeed. So the two of these guys were created to layer together. And there's this one. This is actually a third. So what's going on here? This looks like a variation of the first guy with that table that doesn't fit anywhere. Actually, I think this one is one of the ones that's in the final release. I don't know if this one made it. It's a little, because this was a little crazy looking. Have that reverb going on in there, and here we can see all the stuff that I'm controlling: asymmetry plus minus and bend plus minus, wavetable position. I got some effects happening here. Hyper, which has a dimension expander, which I'm barely using, and it's kind of like a chorus, not quite a chorus, but it's a little bit like it. And then some distortion, kind of tied together inside the Serum, but then it's also being distorted again and then EQ'd. See a theme there. Yep. So those are the three serums. All the other stuff is just from the stems from the original song. So there's not really a lot of sound design involved in that. At least not for me. Yeah, so then this next part, this bass is actually the liquid bass and the phrasey bass from earlier, just on top of each other. Interspersed with this sample. Yeah. So now this guy, as you can tell, is a recording of a sound, and it's not actually from this file. I didn't make it in this song. I made it in another file that I was just trying to make something similar, and I believe I know which patcher it is, because it was a patcher preset. Was it Distorty Reese? No, it wasn't Distorty Reese. I think it was Noisy Reese, which isn't here. Auto Neural is kind of fun. I made that recently. Super Reese? No, that's from Tachycardia, I think. There's Taki Bass. Did I just not save it? Or a 1, that might be it. Nope. This is probably something I should have... These are all just variations of the Distorty Reese. That's why they're, numbered like such. Oh, I broke something. Broke everything. Awesome. That was fun. Let's bring that back. Never had that happen before. Okay. Well, is it okay? No, it's not loading. The window's gone. Or is it? It might come back when it finishes turning on all the way. Oh, it's loading all the windows and not missing anything. Come on. Oh my god. No, that's gone. Okay, I have to open the new screen region, click, doop, there it is. Bring me up here, capture layer windows, minimize. Okay, we're back. We're back. I also want to find that project where I used that song. Is it 615, 618? It was one of the 40Ks where I made the preset that I ended up using. 619, that's what it was. The lengths I go through to give you guys the sound design. I should have already had this gone. This is a song I started making that I didn't actually haven't finished, but this is where I originally created that sound. And this is okay. That's why I wasn't in the preset, because it's actually a effect preset, not a generator preset. This is the patcher that created that sound. What's going on here is that first there's an EQ. This is actually just a regular. It's not even the first EQ, is it? Oh yeah, right. So this is this EQ. This is just a position. Nothing's being automated or anything. The thing that's being automated is this guy, which is my usual bandpass and multi-notch kind of approach to EQ modding. Not a huge surprise there. This is sort of a double distortion. This one regular one and this one weird looking one, and one of the weird looking ones is going into this EQ to kind of be tempered a little bit, and then they're both going to another distortion to get added together, which is going into third distortion, but it's being layered in with this guy, which is the sub actually from the original source, plus some chorusing to get it the sound a little more interesting. The sub is going out into this last guy, because the more that you kind of screw with it, the less that it actually stays together, which is also why in this Maximus, where I'm bringing back the mids and the highs, I'm getting rid of all the lows, so that only the clean sort of original sub is coming into the last distortion, which is causing it to sound, the way it does. But the main automation is coming from this EQ, which has the bandpass and sub notches. Which is what this is. What's going on here? Those are variations on the source, which is this dude. And this is this original guy here. This is a square wave being FM'd by a pulse width modded square wave. And that is also a sine wave that's going out that is also being modified by the pulse width square. And then without the Reese, this is what it sounds like. Not super impressive, but it becomes something interesting. Yeah, so the original output oscillator is pitched out differently from the lower output oscillator, which is causing that Reese motion. That motion. That's coming from. And then when it gets all applied to all this stuff here. Now that was recorded to originally be in this song, and that created this drag sample, which I then found and then injected into the Virtual Riot remix. Which are all these guys. Now the way that I did that is I put it in here, and then I knew that I kind of wanted them to be in between these chord hits. So I put them in here in this size, and then I took the slip edit tool and I would move them around. I talked about this during the arrangement position, but I kind of want to show that off again, just because it is very easy to write like that, because I think people get this idea that I write whole phrases with the intention of actually using the entire phrase the way that I write it. And I really don't. Like, I write whole phrases with a bunch of note movement, a bunch of automation, just to kind of throw shit onto a wall and see what sticks. And oftentimes it's very small portions of things that stick. That's this guy. And this guy is another one of those. I don't even know what that one's from, but this is not a very complicated sound. This is a very wide pan unison saw and a square, I think, being reached against each other. And then I'm actually layering it with another pitched version of it so that it sounds kind of like weird together. This is actually a bit of manual sound design to get it to sound like that. And then it's EQ'd to kind of make it fit into stuff. This might have been reversed. Nope, it's not reversed. I just played it. Oh, it's pitched. So these three things are all from the same original file, but they're pitched differently. And whatever pitch I picked was just whatever it was to fit to whatever key was happening right there. Like, I wasn't super planned. And there's this guy. That was a very long file. I haven't the slightest idea which this one was from. This apparently happened before this guy, because you can just tell by the number 455 versus 446. What was this one? This one was 381. So I don't even know if this one was a track that I made. Like, this is probably just sound I was experimenting on making, and then I don't think I took it any further than that. The process of making this sound, though, was pretty similar to this guy. The same, distorted EQ modulation, compression to make up the gain, that kind of thing. I believe that reverb, the reverb is actually in this particular file. I did that just to give it a little bit more space in between. There's one of the serums again. There are only 3. That's probably the one that was by itself earlier. And here's the serums now, who are filling the job of the imported basses from earlier. That kind of sucking business that's happening is actually a mixing thing. It's a result of the side chaining from the drums. We'll be talking about that a lot in the next part, the third part. So this is interesting. This is this guy again. It is reversed, layered with this. And this is actually cut from the original bass stem from the actual source of all this music. It's the really vocody one, sounding one, growly kind of deal, not the massive-y sounding ones. And I just stretched the crap out of it and reversed it and whatever to just make it sound weird. And I layered it with this other guy because when I did, it got kind of smooth sounding, not very sharp. So I layered it with something that was sharp just to make it sound like it belonged. Yeah. I believe this is, yeah, say that one again. And I picked whatever bits that are going in here the same way that I picked all the other ones. I just sweep them around until I just played it until I found a bit that sounded right to me. So these guys, this guy, and I think this guy are all the same source file. I think these guys too are also the source file. Let's see, 106. Yep, 106. And that sounds like this. Wait a minute, that last bit sounded familiar. Because once again, I'm trying to figure out what the hell this is from. Because if I do know where it's from, I'll go show it to you like I did the first one. Not ringing a bell. What this is it's essentially the same idea of the distorted Reese's with the EQ modulating and in the compression bit, but the difference between those other ones and this one is that this one took the stack a little too far. I kept going. I didn't just stop at 1 or 2 stacks or even just 1 stack like the first source guy was just 1 instance of the EQ modulation. This is many. This is I EQ modulated it and then I did it again and then I compressed it and then I distorted it and then I did it again and then I compressed it and then I distorted it and then I did it again and then I compressed it and distorted it. And eventually it also sounds like it was reversed. Those pops are from me trying to record this, by the way. I didn't need any EQ or anything. This is just what the original source sounds like. One of these days I'll find that source project. It's 106, which meant that that's actually quite a bit older than the rest of them. So if you're wondering what I'm talking about, whenever you record something and you drag it out of Edison, and you don't name it something, it'll be called drag sample, and it gets stored in the Slice Beats folder. And I have a lot of them. So 106. So that was apparently a very specific experiment that I had that I only ever did one. Although the process that I did where I make that kind of thing, the EQ modulation business, is not a resampled based one, which means that there's not really a lot of recording that goes on. The only time I make recordings are when I want to arrange it in something, or if I want to apply like reverse reverb to it, where I reverse a sample, put reverb on it, then reverse that recording, and then the original sample's in the correct speed, but then the reverb's reversed. It's a fun thing to do. I don't think I did that with this particular sound though. It sounds very much like I just did a lot of EQ modulation, because eventually you start to lose what the original note was, and that's very much what happened with that sound. It just got very convoluted, which is why it worked particularly well as a fill sound, like it did, and we did here. Or here. And I mean, just like everything else, I put it down, I used the slip and edit tool until I found something I liked. And this guy had a little help. This is the second drop, isn't it? Yeah, it's the same sample in the second drop, but the original's over here. I put this little hole in here, and this is just volume automation on the sample. Yep, these guys are also part of this original sample. I think this is still that sample. I was particularly happy with that sample. What is this? That guy again. Still that guy. Nothing new in between here. Nothing new in the rise. Nothing new in the other rise. The break still. I don't know if there's even anything new in the second drop. Believe this is 106 again. Yep. This is 106 again. Yep. I will tell you that creating this sound, that like really slowed down bit, is a result of playing lower notes. So I just slid down with a note, and that's what it came out as. Yep. And not a single other new thing happens at the end of this. You might be thinking, oh my God, that's not a lot of sound design. And that's because, A, a lot of this was recorded samples, and B, because this is a remix, which meant that I used a lot of the source material because I wanted it to sound like the original because it's a remix. Okay. Pretty much done with this. If anyone, now it's time to take some questions from the chat, people who are watching on Twitch. I will take questions related to the sound design content that we discussed today on whatever we're doing. Ask questions about what this video was just about, please. In the meantime, I'm going to figure out where this came from. Let's look at the date. Monday, February 24th. Wow, that was a long time ago. I'll do some sleuthing while people are asking questions. If you've got any, you gotta wait for the delay to happen so people can hear that I said something. By the way, I had no control over the delay. If I did, and if I do, someone should tell me so that I can do things. Does no one have any questions? No one's got any questions whatsoever? Come up with something. I kind of want to. Okay, here we go. Example of how the bass got weird clicky sound from the slide. Yeah, sure. If by that you mean like the slowed down bit. I can demonstrate this with any kind of like high frequency but thin sound. Oh, come on, keyboard. My recording setup is not having a good time today. So if I were to create, like my favorite way of doing it is to have some sort of FME mess. It sounded kind of like it was already, but I want like a real mess. And then I'm going to remodulate it with another oscillator. So that if we were to look at this, coming out of a wave candy. Update E. We get that idea, right? Now the higher frequency the mess is, the higher frequencies that'll be in like the shorter aspects. In fact, I'm just gonna. That's super short and super like dense. Like the note is still the same wavelength, but because there's less happening in it, it'll get really nice and thin. Really nice and thin. Now if I play a lower note, that happens. I can just and when that's the source of various modulations like a vocoder or what I was doing with the 106 there, that creates that really chunky, low sounding, like all clicky kind of motion. That's kind of something like I used, kind of like what I used there. I'm looking for projects that I made in February. 140, 213, 236, 214. The hell? Well, once again, I'm going to look at this. Windows shell menu. February 24th. Okay, there is a project. February 24th. How to base 77. Did I actually... Is this a how to base file? Let's find out. Cool. How do you know when a sound is done? Someone just asked. It's kind of like how a song is, how we know a song is done. It's really never done. It's only done when we decide to stop working on it. Generally, if I'm done, if I just really don't want to work on it anymore, that's usually how I know it's done. Or really, whenever any particular change you make to it doesn't make it noticeably better, or in a way that you know it's not going to be better. That's kind of a good way to know when a sound is done. An enjoyable part of doing the sound design. Hashtag filler question. I like two parts of sound design. The primary thing I like about sound design. That actually sounds kind of like it could have been it. Did I record that? Actually, sounds like it could have been it, but I don't think that it is. I mean, I'll look at that in a second, but I don't know that's actually what's happening. 24th of February. Sorry, I just totally blew off your question, but there's one on the 25th. 142.25. What the hell was that? It's possible. Like I have a bunch of projects that I made around that time, but I bet you, I'm willing to bet that I probably tried to work on it more after I made that sound. Loading. Here, while that's loading. There's big sound design. So there's two parts of sound design. One, I like making new and cool sounds. When that happens, it's just a lot of fun. Two, I like recreating sounds that I like. It's like a puzzle to solve, and I like solving that puzzle. Like when doing that feels really awesome. So it's kind of like my two main drives. Deal. How quickly can you show us how to make a bass growl in Serum? Pretty goddamn fast. I can just open up Serum, and then load in one of the growly wavetables. It would take about 4 seconds. Why you never use NI Massive? I don't like Massive. The short version of the rant is that it feels kind of cheaty to start with modulations that I don't know how they were made. And you might be thinking, well, I just described doing exactly that inside Serum. And I'm not saying that everyone else should be held to that standard when they're talking about using Massive. I don't really care if you use Massive or if you use Nexus. It's not really my problem. But for me, it's all about like, I like to know how my sound design is done. I like to know everything about it. So that if someone asked me how it was done, I could tell them. And I can't do that with Massive because I don't know how any of those modulations were made. So using Massive is really just a question of getting lucky with something that already kind of sounds good. Serum I like a lot because it's basically the same thing, only I can make the wavetables, so I know how they were made. And that feels more righteous to me. For the main stem that you used, how did he make that sound? That's kind of hard to answer that question. You should probably ask Virtual Riot when he does his streams, because he does do streams. What are some tips you would give to someone younger who's interested in sound design, music production? Learn it. Try to learn it, and don't be afraid of it, because like some people, I feel like they get an idea in their head that sound design is a lot harder than it actually is. All right, I don't think this is a relevant file. Wow. Okay, I apparently decided that I was gonna be metal in some dubstep track. Jesus. So yeah, I guess I'm gonna go with that. Yeah. Can you explain how Seamless what made? Was made the name. It was a gaming handle I had a while ago. Am I doing part 3 today? No. Can you explain? It was what you just asked. Can you show how to make the screechy pitch slide thing? I think it was a serum base. The screechy pitch slide thing. Was it in this track? Like. I don't think there's a lot of screechy things going on here, except for the FM rise. I explain that. When you say learn it, you mean classes or just surround yourself in it? Like, well, okay. So when I wanted to learn how to do sound design, there really wasn't a lot of resources. YouTube didn't exist in 2004, and also the various forums or whatever were filled with people who didn't necessarily want to share their secrets. And that created an environment where it was kind of impossible to learn some of this stuff, despite the fact that honestly, it's not that complicated. Some of these things that I do are kind of simple. Like even the crazy like 106 file, like the reason why I'm kind of comfortable not being able to find it is because honestly, how I've just described to you how to make it shouldn't be impenetrably possible, like hard for you to figure out. Like it's all about those intuitive leaps that you have to kind of crash into in order to get to arrive at a particular position in knowing something. And there are resources. There are resources. It's funny, resources for that now, and no small part in thanks to mine, on YouTube. But it exists. There exists ways to learn this stuff if you look hard enough. And that's actually true now, because back in the day, if someone had told me that, I would have punched him in the face, because that wasn't true. Have you been at far even as decided to even go want to do look more like Harmer? Yes. Have you done a song using a single sample? It's a cool exercise. A long time ago, but it wasn't, it was fun, I suppose. When am I going to consider myself famous? I don't know. Probably never. So apart from you asking me in terms of good sources for learning sound design. That's a fantastic question. There are a lot of odd individuals on YouTube that do kind of tackle this sort of stuff, but in terms of like the neuro sound design, I can't think of anyone. And I'm not saying they don't exist. I think it's just honestly just because, well, ever since I learned this stuff, I've had no reason to know. You know what I mean? But look up Frequent or Evoke. Those two guys, it's spelled correctly. They do kind of basically the similar kind of sound design, and they're good. And they're good about sharing, and their information about that kind of stuff. I can't think of anyone else, honestly. A big part of the reason, like, why that I decided that I was going to do tutorials is because there was no one else, and I got really mad about that. And I'm constantly thinking about the 2004 noob me and how people like that exist now, and I want them to not be lost in the woods. Determination and just stick-to-itiveness. I mean, it's a big part of that. A big part of that's always going to be true for anything that you do, but it's not as like research intensive as you might think. Like I spend a lot of my time doing it just because I can. Like I know there's a plenty of aspects about sound design that I haven't like mastered, that I just don't know all of. But I know a lot of like enough about what I know that honestly, if I wanted to just go and do that, just do regular stuff forever, I could. But like I like to do the research. I like to experiment, and like that's kind of what I want to just do forever. But for like regular musical applications of sound design, it's not so much. It's not nearly as hard as like learning an instrument. Learning an instrument is way harder than learning this kind of stuff. And it's not like all full. This stuff's not like all full of math and full of like dense and like impenetrable science. Like the stuff really is a lot simpler than you think it is, and especially if you just have never experienced any of it. Yeah. I'm only in high school, and my school doesn't offer much in the field of music. How did you learn what you know? Also, what got you interested in producing? Okay, well, I did go to a performing arts high school, and they did have a incredibly huge focus on music. And they had an electronic music class. That's where they had FL3. That's where I first saw it. And my parents put me into piano lessons when I was a kid, so I always kind of had like a musical nature. I hated it a lot, but as a result, that's kind of how I viewed things. And so when I saw that they had an electronic music production class, I was kind of like, oh, I'll have an advantage over that, and then I'll be good at it. And I was kind of wrong, but it did help to a certain extent. And that's sort of how I first started to deal with that. And then it took me 8 years to learn all the stuff that I knew now, and to the point where I could start doing tutorials 2 years ago. And like in all of that time, I still didn't like learn how to do the stuff that I really wanted to do from like all the true sound design giants from back in the day. I only learned that stuff recently, like comparatively, like the last 2 or 3 years. And that was from a huge amount of luck and a huge amount of experimentation and a very small part, some people telling me some things. And that last part was extremely rare. So now I'm kind of trying to pick up the slack in terms of doing that. With sound design, just play around with things, make a bass, experiment with distortion EQ. Okay, that's not a question. And people are not asking questions anymore. All right, so that was pretty good. They get kind of off track in terms of this track that I wanted to talk about. So good job, me enforcing my own rules. Yeah. Anyway, for those who are watching live, thanks for turning out. For everyone else, if you have any questions about any of this, let me know. And as usual, have a nice day.